Welcome to EchoCast and welcome Corb O'Connor, Director of Accessibility Advocacy at Level Access. Level Access is the global market-leading digital accessibility platform and service provider that anybody watching this episode has surely heard of, helping organizations not only comply with, but really advance a culture of inclusivity through very technical and specific things like legally compliant websites, mobile apps, software, all sorts of other technology. Now, Corb's personal experience and commitment to accessibility is as impressive as his current employers, which is probably how he ended up there. You know, birds of a feather, all that jazz. He himself has had a long and impressive career advocating for accessibility at the state and federal government levels. State of Minnesota. Thank you very much, Corb. You don't even know that. That's my home state. That's where I am right now. So thank you. And also at the National Institute of Health. Thank you very much for that as well. While also raising accessibility capabilities and accessibility consciousness in the private sector, everything from banking to SaaS. Now, at Level Access, he's got a seat at nearly every client table, including Echo 360s, and while also designing company-wide enablement programs and partnerships for Level Access with disability advocacy groups to keep their own solutions very user-centered and socially responsible. So all of that would be enough reason to be chatting with Corb today. But a more timely reason is that today's episode is part of a special EchoCast series focusing on the ADA's impending Title II regulations and the measures and considerations that higher education institutions, among others, are taking to not only comply with, but really, take this opportunity to advance the learning opportunities and experiences for all learners of all abilities. So let's get right to it. Welcome to EchoCast, Corb.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, it's great to have you on, and we are obviously huge fans and partners of Level Access. And talking to anybody at Level Access about accessibility in general is like talking to a sailor about the sea. Okay. So we're going to try to be a little bit more specific to try to keep this from turning into a sort of a Titanic length show here. So we're going to be as specific
Hopefully
as
we won't
possible.
crash it either. I mean, that's a good
Exactly.
start. Yeah. Okay.
Good end to that metaphor. That's perfect. So let's start there. How has, obviously Level Access has been in this market, if you will, leading many companies, both partners like us and the customers that we both mutually serve around accessibility for years, literally years. How has now Title II kind of affected the conversation overall around accessibility, whether that's in terms of the just the urgency of conversations that now level access is being brought into, or maybe the anxieties, the vagaries, or maybe the specificity. Just in general, how is this affecting? How is Title II and what the ADA has put out there? How has it affected level access?
I think what we're seeing is that for years, people have said to the Department of Justice, Department of Education, give us specifics. What does it mean to be accessible? They say, I know that our ATM has to be within 36 inches. I know our doorways have to be 36 inches wide. I mean, you could do a lot of damage with a 36-inch ruler going into a building about accessibility. But when it comes to digital accessibility, the answer was like, it applies. Be accessible, make it usable by people with disabilities. And there's only really been one prevailing standard since 1999, and that's the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. But what I think a lot of folks have seen, especially in the higher education space, is when I go out to the market and I say, I need a student records management tool, I need an e-learning platform, I need to have lockers on my campus for people to get their food and package deliveries. There's really only a few vendors out there. And if you say, well, that's okay, we'll only buy from the accessible ones, you will quickly never buy anything. And so what these regulations have really done is they've given the schools, the universities, the counties, the states, the ability to now go in and say, no, not only has this been clear since the mid 90s, and we have letters from the Department of Justice saying you got to be accessible, but now we have a real technical standard that you must meet. And it's not just me saying that as one customer that you could ignore, but it's these all of your customers are going to be subject to these requirements. They're specific, they're measurable, and there's a specific deadline, which is coming up a lot faster than people realize. We said a year and a half ago, hey, don't wait. Most people wait till about 6 months before the deadline to start doing this. And what we've seen is that a lot of companies have really, this time around, have taken the advantage of saying, time can be on our side. Let's make sure that we do this right from the start. And so it's given a lot of credibility, I think, to schools, to procurement offices, and to the market, saying, do better. Here's the standard you must meet.
Yeah. How does, level access obviously is leading specifically in areas of the technology, like with the digital accessibility, but your own background goes beyond just the tech. I mean, so you've got a consciousness, you've got a kind of a whatever a worldview around accessibility that isn't just relegated to tech. How do you find now because of all of now this not it's not a race, but there's definitely is a little bit of urgency in the movement. How is level access helping customers not just get to the right tech, like okay, give me the tool, just so I can comply and get it over with, but also kind of do a little bit of, kind of teaching along with the tech? Or are you finding that it's just tool based, get me set up with what I need and kind of keep me compliant?
If tools solved our problems, I think we could all save ourselves a lot of info security training every year.
Yeah.
And we would not be buying gift cards for our executives and complying with these, here's this text message code, call me and give me that code. So what we know from the info security world is training's an important part of it, tools are an important part of it, and the human is the important part, and is usually the weakest link, going back to my favorite game show. And so with accessibility now, tools are important, right? Tools let us know, just like we've all come to rely on the spell checker and the grammar checker, and the grammar checker's gotten better over the years, and helps us to write and sound a lot better. And now, thanks to AI, we all know how to use an M dash or how to remove them. But the goal there, right, is to say, how do we make sure we have the right tool in the right place that you want to use it? It's not something you go log into separately, but it's in your content management environment. It's in your dev pipelines, so that as you're building, you're testing. But that's only going to test so far. So then we need to think about the education side. Why am I doing something different? Why is this tool not letting me commit this code? Why is my design getting rejected when I'm trying to put this forward? Why are my usability studies from users saying, I don't like this, I can't see it, I can't read it, I can't understand it? I saw a budget app yesterday update, and I saw somebody comment on Facebook. They said, I'm a cancer survivor. All these changes are just really hard on my brain to wrap my head around what I need to do day to day. And so what we need is that education to say, hey, here's one of our users. They have a disability. Here's how they navigate the world. Here's why what we're doing is important, so that you don't just see a screen of, red errors, but you say, these are all blockers for a user. But then the third piece, right? Bringing in humans into the loop and saying, hey, let's make sure that we've actually tested this with a real person. I can create a form field that has a label on it, has a text field label, has placeholder text, has an overriding label, has extra instructions. And pretty soon we're all forgetting, what is it I'm supposed to put here? And
Um,
so what we do is really bring that now in front of humans with disabilities and say, hey, how was this experience? Was it pretty accessible? Was it really bad? Was it mostly annoying? Where does it rank on that scale? So that we can then help teams to prioritize based on that. So you're prioritizing against the technical standard, against your understanding of your users, and what users are directly telling you.
Yeah, well, and I think that's so well said, and sort of in the face of or in the midst of all the technology, I can personally attest to the level access and the just the great role you guys play in bringing that human component, that human insight into it, because it is, especially for any of us that are in the learning business. I mean, we're not teaching machines. We're educating humans. And so anyway, just really, really appreciate all of that kind of human, kind of centered leadership that you bring. Now, with
Yeah.
that said, I do want to get specific though on a piece of tech that I want to make sure our viewers are aware of and the advancements in it. Specifically with something that Level Access develops and leads with a widget called UserWay. So this is something that we've Echo 360 has had on our website for years. Just recently brought it into one of our applications, Echo Video. Can you specifically talk about? I mean, I know you guys have a lot of stuff to talk about, but that particular tool is something that has really been very helpful for us as we help our customers, not just comply, but raise that level of consciousness. Tell us a little bit about UserWay and how that fits in, and maybe how now with Title II is there even more application for UserWay for folks that might be tuning in.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when I think about how we can use, automated tools and AI to resolve some of the accessibility issues, I think we all have to remember two things. One is that AI was built with models that have intrinsic ableism in them. And the second piece is that we have to now inject into those tools what it should be thinking instead. So, you mentioned in the world of education, we're not teaching machines, though we kind of are teaching AI, and we're having to give AI a lot of that same background and understanding because the work product that AI has been studying has not been built with that understanding in mind. And so, with that in mind, though, we know that a lot of our customers have an enormous backlog of technical debt. And there's a lot of things that AI is really good at. There are some things that humans still have to do. So, in our perspective, when you think about the maturity of an organization in the world of digital accessibility, this AI tool of UserWay is just one of those pieces. It's not going to make you 100% compliant on day one, or even on day 100. But what the tool does is it gives you two things. One is let's clear out some of the noise for assistive technology users right when that page loads. And actually, it's not just for assistive technology users, it's for everyone. We make sure that that tool is not something that a user with a disability needs to turn on to get a more accessible website. It's more accessible for everybody as soon as that page loads. And so our tool will do things like take text that's big and bold and turn that into a heading so a screen reader user can skim a document. It can fix some color contrast issues. We all know, for example, that this color doesn't meet color contrast. And as a brand, we've decided just swap that color with this one that does meet the contrast standard. We can make that switch all throughout a site without having to have the developers go in and make that change in thousands of places. We can label form fields with the text that's nearby. So that's kind of the automated side of what we do. But then we also think about it from a user personalization perspective. I remember when I was in graduate school, there was a student who had a learning disability. And I would frequently say to him as I was listening to my textbook with a screen reader, and he was there reading the paper very slowly compared to his classmates, I'd say, hey, it might be really helpful to use some kind of synthesized speech. You could still read the book with your eyes, but also to get it in your ear might help you to comprehend it. And he said, no, I don't need any assistive technology, right? He was really opposed to that. No problem saying he had a learning disability, but the tools that he envisioned were big lifts. What we have with a personalization widget just in the corner of the site is the ability for someone to go in and say, you know what, I actually want light text on a dark background. It would be helpful to have this text read aloud to me. It might be helpful for me to turn off the animations that are constantly scrolling on this page so that I can get to what I need to get to. Those are all things that a well-designed website can do on its own.
Mhm.
But what a lot of times happens with organizations is we've built these websites over the course of years. We've made lots of shifts, and we haven't really figured out how to now bring progressive enhancement into the world of development when we're retrofitting. So what we're able to do is through this layer on top, be able to give that personalization. Now, if someone's using assistive technology, they're using a screen reader, they may never go into that widget. Not a problem. Those tools are there as an addition, as an augmentation of their experience. Instead, let's stay focused on making sure that our tools don't get in the way of somebody's assistive technology they're bringing to the experience and give them a more accessible starting point than they otherwise would have had, all invisibly to the user.
Yeah, I know, and I love that kind of in the flow of how the user is already going about their day, whether it's in a classroom or on a website. I think that's so important about not having to disrupt that to allow for the kind of assistance or whatever they need. Similarly, how when you think of kind of on more of the administration side, the IT administration side, the idea of integrating these technologies into existing workflows, into existing, whether or other platforms like whether it's an LMS or HRIS. How does level access keep that also? I would imagine that's also from just a functionality standpoint. So not even about the user experience, but just more from the tech integration. Is there attention that's been played that gets placed on that so that the adoption, kind of on the admin front can also be as kind of seamless as possible?
I think the thing that comes to mind for me in those environments is that it's really about three big pieces that the authors, the developers, the product owners have to keep in mind. And the first one being about auditing and testing, right? We've got to get a sense of what is our current state. And even if we deploy an AI widget that's going to help us clear some of those barriers out of the way, we still need to test it. There may be issues where the AI has thought something is the case, but really it misunderstood. Or there might be times where the AI just can't solve the problem that ultimately is plaguing the user. So we'll start with auditing and testing. And then we'll look at building. And as we're building, we're going to be fixing stuff we've already built, and we're going to be building new more accessibly. We're going to be using tools right in the designer and developer's environment that are going to coach them on, hey, you've done this. Here is what would be a more accessible way to solve that problem. And sometimes they're recommendations, sometimes they're requirements. But then finally, we look at it from a governance and reporting perspective, saying, how is the overall trajectory of what we're building? And especially with Echo 360, right? You've got a lot of products. And so being able to track across all of those products and say what teams are doing it really well and what teams need more support so that we can maybe connect those teams together and say, y'all are experiencing the same thing. You're solving it very different ways. One of you has been more successful or been able to work faster. What's different? And sometimes it's we're building with a different component library. Sometimes it's, hey, we all sat down and took a training together, and that really helped set our mindset and consistent vocabulary. But that governance and reporting perspective then helps us as a leadership team and as your strategic advisors to make sure that we are clear on what those next steps look like.
Yeah, that's great. Corb, one thing we're going to be doing across this series with all of our guests, both from the kind of the technology partner front, but also customers, is talking about. I mentioned at the outset kind of how Title II is sort of calling the question, not calling the question, but it's giving people an opportunity uh, legally to really focus on some things that have to happen at the same time, so compliance is a part of it, but at the same time, there's also, and with your experience in this space, I'm sure you've seen a kind of an evolution of accessibility from compliance, really getting into how these technologies and this eye toward inclusion is affecting culture. It's affecting school cultures and company cultures and just how people go about again, not just consuming data or consuming content in the way that they physically need to, but just changing the way, the learning environment kind of feels and is operating. So talk about what you see from your perspective, again, because you even before level access, you were in the space. How are you seeing, where are we, I guess, is the question, in this sort of and you need both. But from compliance to culture, where do you feel like we are at this kind of stage in the accessibility journey, if you will?
Yeah, we've been tracking for several years. We've run an annual State of Digital Accessibility report, and it surveys thousands of folks that are practitioners of building websites, building apps, building experiences. And we ask them about what is it that's proving to be successful in your world? Where are things at? Are you still struggling in this area or that area? What we found over time is that organizations are absolutely maturing. So one of the things that we've seen lately is that more organizations are appointing a central person to be responsible for digital accessibility, as opposed to maybe they just have, a group here and a group there who are trying to make their product more accessible. They're establishing a budget, and our research this year says that more organizations are maintaining and even increasing their budgets for digital accessibility than they have in years past. So from a compliance perspective, we absolutely see that compliance has driven real business outcome and tangible outcomes. We've also seen that more organizations are connecting this to procurement, and realizing that if they make their products more accessible, they are going to be in a position to win more business. But I think it's also really interesting to look at the culture side of things. And, I was with a client a few months ago who was talking about how they've been working with us for years on testing and using our software to build a more accessible tool. And now they have, an AI that they're having to train to be accessible as well. But it was funny because they put up slides in advance of this customer meeting, and somebody in the room said, "Wait a second, our brand colors aren't passing contrast. We're talking about the color contrast in our graphs with a slide that doesn't pass contrast."
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that, brand colors are always the, third rail of any marketing team. But when we can point out and say those kind of things, and it doesn't come from your accessibility partner, it comes from someone in the room saying, we could just darken our green a little bit. We could use black instead of white there.
Yeah.
And then we're really seeing that culture shift occur. They're bringing that technical expertise. They're recognizing this distinction between we're hosting, materials about accessibility in an inaccessible platform. And then that's what really starts to change the culture, because we realize then, well, wait a second, that means that somebody next to me, they might be colorblind. They're working with me. They might have a disability. I never thought to ask. It's never come up. But can I create a more inclusive workplace by just adjusting just a little bit some of the things that we do? And that little bit becomes a little bit more and a little bit more over time. So
Mhm.
definitely seeing that combination of compliance, but now that culture piece is starting to move up as well as people realize what they're needing to do.
Yeah, I love it. And so here's a close circuit to all you precious marketers out there, of which I am one of them. So that exact scenario that you brought up, Corb, it happened here at Echo. Echo Exam, the first color way that we chose for the logo. We were all excited by it, kind of, and it didn't pass. And of course, my initial instincts as a sort of a precious brand steward is like, well, that we can't change it because that's like, it's like, oh no, we totally can change it. It's not that big of a deal. And so you change it, you adjust it a little bit to help it show up, literally help it show up. So anyway, great example. I had to chuckle when you brought that up. So all right, well, hey, we're gonna let Corb go. Thank you very much, Corb. But everybody else, stick around. You know the drill. For a quick now demonstration of some of the applications referenced here in this EchoCast. I have a feeling it might be about UserWay. And then just a reminder, you can always go to echo360.com for more EchoCast episodes and more resources to transform your own learning.
Thanks again to Corb O'Connor for sharing your experience and knowledge about accessible practices and inclusive design. Your insights continue to shape how we think about digital inclusion across the ecosystem. Before we dive into specific accessibility areas of the ecosystem, Echo 360 wants to recognize the critical role that Level Access plays as our accessibility partner and guide. Their support in developing and maintaining our voluntary product accessibility templates helps us to showcase the work we're doing to ensure the ecosystem works for all audiences, aligning with evolving accessibility standards and inclusive design principles. To begin, I'd like to demonstrate Level Access UserWay widget, which offers customization of our experiences for users with disabilities and specific UI preferences. Whether through adjusting font sizes, contrast, or animation preferences, the widget empowers learners to personalize their experience, making adjustments in real time to suit their needs. Additionally, our guest, Corb O'Connor, has joined me to highlight how we are working to optimize the ecosystem for those using assistive technologies, such as screen readers, starting with our main navigation. Corb will demo how embedding accessibility into the coding of a digital experience can help screen reader users navigate content more seamlessly, reinforcing our commitment to inclusive learning experiences, because learning changes for the good.
So what I'm about to show you is a screen reader. This one is going to take what's on the screen and read it aloud to me. Think of it as the opposite of Siri. This one's called JAWS. It's the most popular on the Windows operating system. You might also find non-visual desktop access. It's kind of its chief competitor, and its free version. We'll navigate through this Echo Video site and just show you what that experience is like with a screen reader.
Accessibility menu button as pop-up
So the
dialog.
first thing I find is that menu with a pop-up. That's the accessibility widget we were talking about, the one in the corner there that would let you personalize this page, but I can just keep going.
Banner. Navigation region. Link graphic echo video. List of 3 items. Visited current link header dash content. Link current header dash user dash courses. Link current header dash collections. List end.
So I could get to those pieces in the nav. I can keep going.
Create button menu collapse. Navigation region end. Settings options button menu. Link graphic notifications. User menu button. University logo graphic.
And so if I go back to that settings option,
Notification settings option.
you'll notice that
Settings
it says,
options button menu.
it tells me that it's a button and that there's a menu attached to that. So I can just press
Enter.
enter.
Settings options menu. Account settings 1 of 6. To move through items, press up or down arrow.
And I can just navigate through this menu of navigation.
Recycle bin 2 of 6. Help 3 of 6. Feedback 4 of 6. Downloads 5 of 6. Legal 6 of 6.
And then if I wanted to close it, just a quick press of the escape key.
Escape leaving menus. Settings options button menu. Press
And I'm
space
back
to
to where I
activate the
started.
menu. Then navigate with arrow keys.